There is real anger and discontent towards INEOS bubbling among United fans. Some is totally justified.
66 quid!
66 quid!
Ticket price rises that weren't consulted, treatment of season ticket holders, the Hag and Ashworth mistakes. Some is exaggerated, but where does the truth lie? I want to explain my frustrations that I've got with INEOS and Manchester United's reality right now after a frustrating end to the January transfer window. I think it's high time that we have a conversation really together about INEOS, Ratcliffe, United, Amorim, the reality, moving forward, and the January transfer window that's just happened. You can let me know your frustrations, and I can see there are a lot of frustrations around Ratcliffe. I want to speak kind of through the whole thing. When it comes to, look, I say Ratcliffe, I mean INEOS, but they're kind of one and the same. Ratcliffe is the face of it. And the frustrations towards him are growing and growing and growing. You know, you overlook now the fact that he's put $300 million of his own money into the club. You overlook the fact that they installed a footballing structure because of everything they've done since. And look, they've made major mistakes with Ten Hag, with not sacking him, with Dan Ashworth. But I think in particular, it's the lasting damage that's going to come from how they're treating season ticket holders and the unconsulted ticket price rises that are attached to, members tickets going up to 66 quid. That's going to have the lasting damage because I think it's a prelude of what's coming next with the stadium. And a lot of the frustration from United fans is built around those. But specifically focusing on Ruben Amorim and this January transfer window, that kind of compounds and it's on top of it. We needed an attacker this window. Right? Ruben Amorim would have wanted one. He would be happy that United found a solution for Marcus Rashford eventually. Nobody would want him to pay his wages. Aston Villa came in at the 11th hour. He'll be happy at the fact that we've signed Patrick Dorgu and actually have a genuine left-footed wing-back. Great. It's the first time we've had one of those in about 18 months. But overall, he's going to be disappointed that he's now left with less options. Now, I don't personally feel that our squad is any weaker without Anthony or Rashford. And you might say that's foolish of me to say that about Rashford, but that's not because I don't think he's capable. But I don't think it was ever going to happen again at United. I thought that ship had sailed. He could have stayed for the rest of the season. I don't think we would have seen Rashford flourish. And when it comes to the situation around the attacker, I think United were correct to not just pay up 5 mil for Matthias Tell and then loan him back, and then give him back to Bayern. Then Spurs ended up getting a buy option included in it. But I actually don't think that United could have or should have spent that amount on him. However, I'm not talking about that panic signing at the end or the lack of a panic signing. They knew how bad our attack was at the start of the window. And you're telling me that Barada, Wilcox, Chris Vavell couldn't have done the research and couldn't have found someone on a short-term deal? Well, they've clearly decided no. And I think that's wrong. But you know what I genuinely think? I've got a photo of Osimhen and Gyökeres here. I think if United signed either of these in the January transfer window, I don't think it would solve our problems. I think the anger would just move away from not having a finisher to not being able to get the ball to the finisher. I don't think it would transform our season. Now, what INEOS have done here, if United fans don't understand how bad our finances are, I think this January transfer window was almost like a reset button. Because they could have gone out and signed someone on a short term, and it probably would have improved our options and probably would have slightly improved the second half of the season. Would it have put us in a better position in the summer? Questionable. Would it have been the best use of resources? Questionable. Previously, under Woodward, under the Glazers, before, we would have definitely done that. We would have signed anybody. Whether it was Igalo, whether it was Weghorst, so that happened on Ten Hag, of course. Loads of late signings. I swear Falcao was it's 2 a.m. in the morning as well on deadline day. INEOS have decided not to. And right now, they are getting scrutinised to hell for it. It almost feels like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If they do, they'll probably get accused of panic buying, of spending money incorrectly with all the cuts that are going everywhere else. If they don't, then they get accused of not spending, of becoming Glazers V2. But you know what sort of my biggest frustration around all of this is, it's kind of like the elephant in the room being ignored. There's never really truly been a proper conversation around the debt. Now, if I remember correctly, when they were first buying the club and it was supposed to be the 100% purchase, the conversation was around the debt being paid off by INEOS and then going on to INEOS's books and being taken away from Manchester United. And that obviously changed when the Glazers just refused to sell unless somebody came in with a ridiculous overinflated market price, and nobody would do that, and not even the Qatari bid. And that's why we're in the situation we're in now. But I don't get why the debt isn't really being talked about. And I think that's where a lot of the anger comes from United fans. Is all these micro cuts, like death by 1,000 cuts, whether it's cutting funding to charities or the cuts that everyone agreed with, by the way, the credit card cuts to the top level staff, or the staff Christmas party getting cancelled, all these different things, and of course the ticket prices, all pale in comparison to the concept of the debt being corrected. And I'm going to presume that the reason that isn't a conversation right now is because I don't know when the intention is for Ratcliffe to own more than 50% of our club, but that's the thing that changes the needle. That's the thing that moves the bottom line far more than anything to do with a cut here or a cut there. But that January transfer window, I think, is massively indicative of how bad our finances are, and I reckon they're probably worse than we actually know. And if we all want a genuine rebuild and a genuine reset, it feels like that January transfer window was a bit of a reset, not the reset that anybody wanted, because the second half of the season, I've already said, I've got absolutely zero expectations for the league. I've got hope that we can win the Europa League, because that's going to be the definer of whether this season can be looked on with any sort of fond memory, really. But you brought a manager in mid-season who you knew played a specific style. And after that January transfer window, look, Dorgu, I think, will make a difference. But he's still missing that goal scorer. I don't think it was possible to bring in that goal scorer in the long term of who he wanted. It feels like some of the anger is exaggerated towards Ratcliffe and towards INEOS, but it feels like a lot of it is justified. And I'll say it again, I think the treatment of season ticket holders and the treatment of fans with ticket prices, that's going to have the longest lasting damage. I think the mistakes of Ten Hag, the mistakes of Ashworth can be overcome, can be moved on with correct decisions over the course of time. But I think the shift, the willingness for the club to forego goodwill and good relationships with the fans for a little tiny bit of money here or there, that for me is massively indicative that the finances are probably worse than we all know. And that, I think, is at the core of the frustration of United fans, and then that gets compounded by what happened in the January transfer window. INEOS are going to have an incredible summer now after what's happened in January. But in the meantime, and I've already done a video on this, I do feel sorry for Ruben Amorim. It's exactly why he didn't want to take the job in mid-season. But United made him do it. You can let me know what you think in the comments below. But this is such a... I'm looking forward to the January transfer window properly being behind us and we can just talk about football again. Or maybe not, considering we'll start losing every single game again. Great. United.